Hello and welcome to the Inside Stylists Podcast. I'm Emma Morton-Turner and you're listening to episode 13, Interior Stylists Get Their Blogging Questions Answered with Sarah Akwisombe. So this episode is full of ideas and tips and kind of great knowledge on how to get your blogging working better. It's a very interesting time at the moment with the whole social media and influencers and Instagram and all of this sort of stuff that all merges into interior styling and writing, and I think you'll find it very interesting. I hope there's nothing offensive in there. I don't think there is. But at the very end of this episode, I'm going to share with you what happened after we recorded this, because it was very eye-opening. Anyway, enjoy the show and stay tuned till the end for that story. So normally when I start my podcasts, I introduce people by saying what they've done, but actually I don't almost know where to start with you because today's guest does everything. She blogs, she does videos, she does styling, she does courses. She's like an all-round entrepreneur, and I'm very happy to say that Sarah Akwisombe is my guest today. Hello, Sarah.
Oh, hi. That was such a lovely introduction. But that is my gift and my curse.
Yes, I'm sure.
In that I'm always like preaching to people, do one thing and do it really well, have a strong brand, and then for me I'm like, but I want to do everything. My brand is everything.
You've got a very strong brand though, very strong. It's very clear what you are. Like, actually, we're sitting in Sarah's room right now, her living room, and I'm looking at the wallpaper thinking, I've seen this wallpaper, I know exactly where I am. If I did a snapshot, it would be like, that's you sort of thing.
It's weird though, I think, because when it's yourself, it's hard to see it. And I think other people go, oh, you know, this is so you, or this is your brand, it's very on brand for you. And I'm like, is it? I don't know.
I had a conversation with someone this morning and we were talking about how she styled for quite a traditional magazine, but she didn't feel it was her style. And then we were talking about something I had done, and she said, well, that's not your style, is it? And I was like, oh, I don't really know what my styling style is. I know what my personal style is. Yeah. It's quite interesting.
I think sometimes an outsider view is the best one.
Yeah. And hopefully it's flattering.
Exactly.
So for anyone who doesn't know you, I came across you when I was like looking at interior styling on Google to see who came up top, to see kind of what blogs are doing really well. Yeah. And you came up and I'd not heard of you, and I started Googling, and you had a whole I think it was a blog post about how to become an interior stylist, and I thought, I've never heard of this Sarah.
Yeah, she's not even in the industry.
I know everyone.
That's just me being good at knowing how SEO works and going, oh, okay, so if I want to start getting taken seriously as an interior stylist, I'll just do this and put some SEO on it, and then.
But you've done styling in the past, haven't you? You've done interior styling.
I have now, I think, but at the beginning I was very much obviously assisting. But I wanted to share stuff about being an interior stylist and what I thought like it took and what I'd learned on jobs and stuff like that. And so I think just blogging about it with certain keywords in there helped me rank on like the first page of Google. And then
third.
I know. And then everyone was suddenly like, who's this? Like, who's she? And then actually it sort of started working in my favour. Yeah. So
I read, I did a little bit of research. I tried to not ask people questions that they can find online already. And in my researching, I found your blog post about the first shoot you assisted on.
Yes.
And it was fantastic. It was that whole, your alarm didn't go off.
And it was the worst. It was the worst. I'd like, you know when you've been given your break, and I was like, I've finally got my break come through, and I've literally like effed it up in the first moment, like literally. And luckily it was fine.
Is that like when you get someone who's really big in blogging and they say they'll do a podcast and then you get lost on the way and turn up really late? Is it a bit like that?
No.
Yeah, guess what happened, guys?
Not at all.
It was good. And it was a 2-day shoot. And
it was a 2-day shoot.
You were kind of, the way you were talking about the locations and things, and because as stylists we see lots of really amazing places.
Yes.
And I put on Instagram a little while ago that I can appreciate somewhere, but I'm not in awe of these amazing places anymore. It's not my style.
Yes, exactly.
Not poo-poo them, but you just kind of think, it's lovely, it's a mansion, it's worth $4 million. I wouldn't live here.
Exactly. You start going, I don't know, the carpet's not that nice. And then you're like, who am I kidding? If I had this house, like, I wouldn't be complaining.
No, I had the money for the house, that's usually the thing.
But yeah, I was like completely, I think it was the first time I'd been in a location house, and it was also just the first time I'd been in a house like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just remember going out, I was taking pictures of everything, I was breaking all the rules, because obviously you're not meant to do that, you're not even meant to... I didn't know anything about, like, being on a shoot. Like, you're not meant to take pictures of the product, and you're not meant to take pictures of the location or tell anyone where you are. And I actually got pulled up by the agency, like 2 or 3 times, because they were like, you cannot keep posting where we're shooting.
Because they didn't want the brand... They didn't want,
well, probably...
people to know where the brand had shot.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, really? I've never experienced that.
Oh, that's weird. I thought that was
really
like the done thing.
No.
But it was... And maybe the brand didn't want to know who was working on it and who the photographers were and all that kind of thing. But I was just like, oh my God, this is cool. Like, I'm a total idiot and I'm just going to share everything.
No, I think that's a rarity. I've never had that. Normally, people want you to share. It's like, if a product is...
Probably now.
Yeah.
Because now, obviously, everything is about social media and getting the most exposure. But this was probably 4 years ago.
Craze.
Yes, Instagram was around, but it wasn't like, there wasn't stories, there wasn't, it was just like, people were like, Instagram, whatever. Yeah. So, in the styling jobs that you've done, which would you say was your favourite so far? See, I haven't actually done loads, that's the thing. I had a couple, I did one, that's a really interesting story actually. I worked with Paint by Conran when they were first launching, and I got to design all the room sets, and it was like loads of different colours, and a ridiculously ambitious like project where we were having to shoot walls before they were even dry, and that was really good because it was the first time I'd got to like creatively like flex. But then they didn't use any of it. It just all went in the bin. So that was kind of a really interesting lesson as to like what, you know.
Did they give you feedback? I'm not asking you to share it. I'm just mean did they feedback
it wasn't.
And you kind of
and this isn't just me saying, oh, it wasn't me. It was they'd basically used. I mean, this is really baiting them up, isn't it? They'd used a photographer who was completely inexperienced. Was like an 18-year-old, was shooting on the wrong lens, didn't know what he was doing, and even on my, you know, with my little bit of experience that I had then, I was kind of like, I don't think this is like how it should be getting shot. But anyway.
I did shoot like that once. They wanted to. It's cost cutting in the wrong place.
Yeah,
isn't
exactly.
it?
Yeah.
And I had a student, and I was shooting. It was my living room. We done this big makeover. It was a furniture brand with a sofa and everything, and it was all grey, and all the pictures looked lilac. And because some of it went lilac and some of it was grey, it just nothing went. It looked really wrong. They just the colour balance was all out and stuff. And they did use it, and it was like, oh, my name's on that, and it's terrible.
Well, it was awful for me at the time because I was like, again, like this is a huge break for me. This is like the most important thing I've done so far, and to then just be like, it's not getting used at all. I was like, oh, okay.
Actually, I'm thinking of lots of things that happen.
Yeah,
actually,
I think everyone's had like, not, you know, everyone can relate to that. Not necessarily a styling job, but everyone's had a thing where you think it's going to be the best thing you've ever done, and then it just falls through. And it's just part of working for yourself
and moving on and learning from it. And,
experience. Basically.
Yeah. You kind of bounce back from it now.
Yeah.
The reason that we're kind of doing this podcast today is to talk about blogging, but I thought I'd just explain to the listeners why I've selected you.
Oh, lucky me.
So basically, when I did that search and found you, I was watching what you were doing on the blog, and your blog looks fantastic, and it was really clear what you were talking about. It was really interesting, it was really engaging, and it was nothing like a blog I'd seen on interiors before. Okay. And then as I was searching, I found that you did the blog course. Yes. So I did that, and that was 2 years ago in January, and it was brilliant. It was really good, and that's why I was like, you are the person I want to talk to about blogging, because you do it in a way that is fresh, and it makes you think about what you are doing. It's kind of not just how to blog; it's like the whole thing, the branding and everything. But that's not all that you do. You do quite a lot of courses now. You have the Noble Business School. Yes. That's noblebusinessschool.com. And you do lots of courses. So you've done some Pinterest, you've done Brand School, you've done Insta School, which I know you're about, by the time this airs, you'll just have done another Insta School. And money manifesting school as well. Yeah. So it's kind of like, as you find a need, you find a course. Yeah,
and I think it's just exactly like as a need comes up, and as I learn new things or I evolve as a person and as a brand, then I kind of want to share what I'm learning. Yeah. I mean, the whole way I pitch it is just, it's me sharing what I've learned in business. That's all it is. Yeah. So I'm never saying, this is how you do it, or this is the be or end all, or this is perfect. It's always just like, well, here's what I did,
Yeah.
and it either worked or it didn't work.
But I think people can see how successful you are and how you're very driven and you're very focused and you get results. So they're kind of seeing if this is what you found and you like it, then it's like, well, if it works for you, then it'll work for me. So it's kind of a proof in the pudding, isn't it? It's
exactly.
It's very clever the way you've done that, and the blogging was brilliant. And I don't know if you still do this, but it was like once you join up, you can still access the course.
All the courses that I do, I always just do as lifetime access, because I just think there's nothing worse than you've paid for something and then because you didn't complete it in the first 6 months, you can't get it again. It's like, I know what life's like. Everyone can get really busy, so I just always do that.
And you might start something completely new and want a refresh.
And suddenly go, oh, hang on, that thing she talked about 2 years ago was really relevant.
Or if you get stuck, I think if you get stuck and you're thinking, I need to put a post out and I don't know what to do, I'm just really like
go and get a refresh.
Sort of thing. Just kind of check in. One more thing I'm going to just quickly talk about before we start getting to the blogging questions that have been sent in is your Insta quiz.
Yes.
So I did your Insta quiz. The Insta quiz is, do you want to explain what it is?
Yeah, so it's essentially a quiz. It's a free quiz that's on the Noble Business School, and you can fill it out, and basically it tells you kind of what your Insta personality / Instagram brand is. And it's sort of just there to, I guess, guide you a little bit. I think a lot of people with Instagram go, oh, I don't know what I should be doing. I don't know what my style is. I don't know how I should be talking to my audience because that person does it that way and it works for them. And there's so much comparison that it's kind of a thing of like, actually, this will tell you what your brand and your style is, and then it will help you focus on that. Yeah,
it's really clever. I did it last night. I've known about it, and I kept meaning to do it. And then when I was it popped up, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that now. So I came out as I'm an innocent.
Yeah.
And when we were just talking.
I can see your face. You're like, I don't want to be that.
I want to be innocent. But it says clean-hearted fun. I was like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
And then the key values are happy, innocent, and light-hearted.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's kind of me. But then it said my anti-values are negativity, pessimism, and trying to find a problem. And that is so spot on. I was like, oh my God, that's really mad.
So, yeah, the anti-values, I guess, are like things that you don't stand for.
Can't stand it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's like, that's okay, so I'm an innocent.
Yeah.
No, I was never going to be a rebel, but
well, you don't know. Yeah, I'm glad that it felt like it was right.
Yeah.
And I
really
think
good.
Sometimes it's quite interesting because I've done it. I do it at different times, and sometimes I turn out as different things.
Do you?
If
really
I do it 6 months ago and then I do it now, and also just depends a bit on what your mood is that day. But I think overall it's pretty much spot on. But yeah, sometimes you're like, oh, I go between. I used to very much be like a rebel, brand archetype, whatever you want to call it. And the more recently I've done it, I've either been the creator or a hero brand. And the hero brands are very much about being the example.
Yeah.
And being all about like kind of bettering yourself and being the best version you can be. And so I think that's quite relevant to like where I am now.
Yeah. I think all of those are, from what I see from your brand, I think they're spot on. We're here to do some blogging talk.
Yes.
So should we get on to the
Let's
Q&As?
do it.
So, I asked around on the Facebook group and on Instagram and Facebook, in general, on all the Inside Stylists pages for questions to be sent in, and we've got 12 questions. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah, sorry, I might suddenly like make all of the further 11 irrelevant.
Oh, that's intriguing. Okay, so I'll just read them out, and then we'll kind of go from there. So the first one, I kind of thought it would be good to just start of 5 good reasons to start a blog, kind of thinking of just kind of from your point of view. That's kind of my question to you.
Yeah.
You don't have to say 5.
Oh yeah, I'm not very good at like thinking of 5 things, but reasons you should start a blog. Okay, so firstly, going back to what I said earlier, just from the very boring technical SEO, which for anyone who doesn't know is search engine optimization, which is basically where you show up on Google. It really helps. Nothing else you can do other than blogging and putting stuff on a website is going to improve your SEO. So that's the first reason. If you want to be discovered as Interior Stylist London, then you kind of need to be blogging. I think secondly, it just really helps you to stay current and fresh. Like it makes you think about what you can write about. So if you like stuck for ideas, well, I saw this really cool armchair the other day in West Elm. Okay, why don't I do a roundup of the best armchairs? And it sort of just keeps you afresh of what stock is new, what designers are doing what, because you have to keep relevant and you have to keep writing content. So, and I think it just overall just helps to build your brand, really.
Yeah.
Like, if people have a way to further delve into what you're doing and see that you know your shit, basically, then it really helps.
Yeah. And I think also it's a really good way of kind of saying who you are personality-wise. People want to work with people. They don't want to just work with a style. They want to have the day with that person, and that photographer wants to be with that person.
That's true. Yeah, you do. It's a lot about personality, and I think blogging and both Instagram now is starting to go like this. Is it got to the point where it just became very, like, didn't have personality? It was very much just like, oh, well, I'm the authority on this and I can't, you know, when you read a newspaper about interiors, it hasn't got any personality. And then, you know, things have started to get more of a personality and more of a personal brand going behind them, and I think it does make a difference.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into the questions then. So, first one. What should I call my blog? Should it be my name, which is my brand, or should it be a bit more clever?
People ask me this all the time. A lot of that, right, so the way I answer questions, I think people are usually quite disappointed because I'll always just be like, it just depends. Like, everything like that is so nuanced and it depends on the context. So for me, it was right to use my name because I knew, knowing the type of person I am, that I can never just stick to one thing. And I knew that I wanted to build a personal brand, and that the long game was that I wanted to have my own look and my own style, and that's why people would come to me and that's why they would follow me. But if some people are like, no, I don't want anyone to know who I am, I don't have my own style, I just love a bit of everything, then no, you wouldn't make it your name then. It really depends. And I think also, if you're talking about starting a blog as a stylist, then maybe you would use your name because it's about positioning you as the stylist rather than, curtainsandcushions.com is a bit vague. That doesn't really tell me like who you are. No. So it really just depends. There's not like any right or wrong answer. You just have to go with like what you feel like.
Which is the best, easiest platform to build a blog on for a technophobe like me? I've heard Wix is the best, but it can't do as much as WordPress.
Okay, so again, I'm going to give a really disappointing answer. I've only used Squarespace and WordPress, so I can only comment on them. I've heard mixed things about Wix. I've heard that it's not very good for SEO. I've heard that it's not very easy to use, and then I've heard people tell me it's amazing. So, can't comment on Wix. I've always used Squarespace for blogging, and I've always found it to be in equal parts brilliant and a pain in the arse. So,
as in, you can't get it to do what you want it to do.
As in,
it's restrictive.
No, it's just can be a bit fiddly sometimes. Like you're trying to click on something in the right place, and it's not quite doing what you want. Just typical technical bullshit, basically. But overall, in terms of what it looks like and ease of use, I would say Squarespace over WordPress 100% is easiest, and it's a better place to start. WordPress is, so firstly there's WordPress.com and then there's WordPress.org. WordPress.com is like the free version, but it has loads of limitations, so maybe not great. You can't do simple things like Google Analytics and stuff like that. Yeah, again, I haven't used it. I've used WordPress.org for the Noble Business School site because it needed so much more scope. It needed to have a members area and courses and just stuff that you can't really do that easily in Squarespace.
Yeah, so, Inside Stylists is on WordPress.
Yeah, exactly, because you probably need to store loads of files.
Exactly. Coding that you can adapt. And,
exactly. If you are just looking for something that's going to look great out of the box, is quite simple to use, that will have loads of support, you pay one monthly fee and it covers everything, like just go for Squarespace.
And they're not expensive, are they? They're like under £5 a month.
Squarespace, I don't know, because there's different packages.
Sorry, I put you on the spot there. I don't even know what it is, but I know that WordPress isn't the domain isn't expensive. So.
Yeah, WordPress is kind of like you pay for separate hosting, then you pay for a URL, and then you pay for this, and you sort of like maybe losing track of what you're like paying for. Whereas Squarespace is like, you pay your £10 a month, and it covers everything.
So. Yeah, so it might be easier for
good for beginners.
I was gonna say, we don't want to start messing with loads of expense when you don't know if you're going to like it or not, I suppose.
Exactly, yeah.
Next question. I'm a freelance interior stylist and I've been getting pretty busy up until now. I want to do a blog but never really have the time, and as I'm doing well, do I really need a blog? What will it really add to my career other than take up more time? I already share behind the scenes on Instagram. This kind of ties into what you said at the very beginning, really, doesn't it? It's that whole, you're creating a brand. Can you do that on Instagram and not on a blog? Or
Totally, yeah, of course you can.
Yeah.
Of course you can now. And like the thing is, you know, when I started a blog, how long was it now? 4 years ago, maybe? It was a completely different space. Completely different space. And I think, you know, I run a blogging course, but I'm sort of going, do I need to run it again? Because actually have things just all completely changed, and now it's not so much blogging, it's Instagram and Snapchat and all these other things. So no, you don't need to have a blog at all. You could, again, it comes back to that, do you want the SEO? Do you want to have a place where people can get a deeper dive into what you're doing, or is it just about building brand? If it's just about building brand, you can probably just do that with Instagram. And the thing with blogging is that it's a commitment, and you do need to be consistent with it in order to build up any kind of following or start getting any cut through anywhere or have people notice your blog posts. So if you realistically sit there and go, I can't commit to it, then don't do that. Find a way that's going to work for you.
It is really time consuming. I mean, Instagram,
it's very time
obviously
consuming.
If you're taking pictures, it's going to take time for that, but posting onto Instagram can take 5 minutes. Posting onto a blog takes a lot longer, and it's a lot more involved.
Exactly. And also things are changing. People's attention spans are a lot shorter, and we have Instagram to blame for that, which is a good thing and a bad thing. So people don't always want to read like a 10-minute read. They just want to see a 10-second read. So if you can do a picture with a couple of, a caption that's almost like a mini blog post, that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's what's long tail comment. It's not comments, is it? But long tail captions.
Yeah,
like the way people are moving forward.
Yeah.
Is there any point in having a blog when I can? We've just kind of answered that one. When I can share it all on Instagram. We've just answered that one.
Yeah.
The interiors blogging arena is so full at the moment, and I don't want to be just another stylist who shares press releases that everyone has seen already.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want to just show work I've done either. How can I stand out in a busy crowd? I just can't get started.
Okay, so there's a few things in that. Yeah, firstly, the whole sharing press release thing is boring. Do
you think it's boring to people who don't get the press releases? Because we're kind of in a little interiors bubble, so we see...
That's very true. I don't know, because I'm not that person, I don't know.
It depends who their reader is. If their reader is other stylists, then it's be boring. If their reader is interior people who read the magazines.
But I think the wider thing with that is not so much about whether it's interesting, it's about whether you have a unique take on it, and and that's why it becomes like, there's a sea of interiors things, they're all posting the same images from the press release. So unless your writing itself is really standout, super personality driven, then the way you write about that press release might be different. But if you're all using the same images and you're sort of saying the same things, there's literally no cut through. So I always say, like, if you can, go and get original pictures, or ask if there's something, can I get a private interview that no one else has got, or can I go and take a few pictures of me trying out the furniture or something, just to give it like... like a point of difference, basically. So yes, it is very saturated. The same way Instagram is now incredibly saturated with interior designers or interior stylists or loads of wannabes, basically. So I think I always say it comes down to value. So how well do you know your audience? And if you don't have an audience yet, who do you want your audience to be? And what sort of questions would they have, and how can you just be useful? Because I think when you're really in it, like, I forget silly things like how I've put this room together would actually be really useful to talk people through. Well, how did I know what colours were going to go, and how did I sit and pick the furniture? Did I do it online? Did I go to a shop? I think you take it for granted, and you forget.
You forget what you know that people
forget
don't
what
know.
you know, and you forget because it comes so naturally to you. And I think you have to be, as any kind of public brand, you have to be quite able to step away from yourself and look in as an outsider and go, what would I want to know? What would I want to see from this person? What would I want to hear? And that is a skill in itself. Yeah. I don't know if that really answers.
Yeah, it does. And there's another thing in that, I can't remember, I don't know if it was on your course or not, but it was that whole thing of, you don't buy your shoes from one shop. You buy your shoes from 10 different shops because you get something different from each shop. Yeah. And it's the same with blogs. I don't read just one blog. I read 10 because I get something different, and it's the personality behind the blog that I go to. So even in a saturated market, if you have your personality coming out, and people like that, then they will relate, and then they will read what you're writing. So the saturation is almost like an excuse not to get started.
Yeah, and I think you do have to be aware, of finding a point of difference and having a bit of a niche. Like maybe you only write about, this is a very bad example, but maybe you only write about kitchens, right? At least that gives you some footing that helps you to stand out. So no, you're not going to attract everyone all the time, but then when I want to do my kitchen, I know exactly who to go to. So, you need to think about what your point of difference is. You're exactly right. But things being saturated shouldn't be a reason not to do it. It's just about being clever and finding how you fit into that.
Yeah. This is quite an interesting question. Which day and what time is best to publish a post?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter?
No.
Oh, that's interesting.
No, it literally doesn't matter anymore because no one's sitting on your website.
Yeah, waiting
all
for
the
their
day.
email to pop up.
Oh, it's 7 a.m. now it's gone live. They don't even do that on Instagram.
I was just going to say, is it the same on Instagram?
Instagram's different. There's definitely certain times of day that you should post, or that there's more people online. So, but blogs is completely different. You can just do it when you want, and then you just need to promote it afterwards.
Yeah, by using social media.
Social media, word of mouth, an email newsletter if you've got people on your mailing list, or you can start building one. Yeah, lots of different ways.
Right, next one. Not a question about blogging per se, but I've been asked to write blog posts for other companies' brands in the past for exposure or a small gift. Now, I don't work for free, but is there ever a time when the exposure makes this worth doing? Now, this is a question that's come up quite a bit in the Facebook group because I think because we are stylists, we're asked to do this sort of thing quite a lot. And in general, we tend to say no. But do you have a different take on that?
Blog posts, I would say no. I would say I've done things for huge companies that you think is gonna I've written a blog post for like NatWest, that's gonna bring me it doesn't make any difference. No. How many times do you go on a company's website and go on their blog? They're just mostly doing it for either brand building or for SEO. And if it's for brand building, sometimes, because it might be a thing of if they're then going to push it out on Instagram or they're going to push it out on other areas, something like I would be more inclined to do something for someone's Instagram because they can promote it and literally tag you in the caption, and then you can get followers from that, or at least people come in and looking at what you're doing. Whereas with a blog post, yes, they can tag you, but it just seems like a slower sort of process. And also I just think that people reading blog posts is going down.
How can I build up my followers? I post every week, well, most weeks, but I seem to have hit a plateau and don't know how to push past it.
I always say, regardless of whether it's a blog or whether you're trying to get your business known or anything, the best thing you can do is get an organic mention from an influencer.
Yes. Now, I've got a really good example of this. I went out for my wedding anniversary meal with my husband, and I came back and had loads of pings saying, Lisa Dawson's just mentioned your podcast. And she just mentioned it in passing. PR had kind of mentioned it in the comments, and then she mentioned it, and I was like, oh, that's really nice. And then the next day I went on Instagram stories and said, oh, she launched a podcast the next day. And I said, oh, Lisa's got this new podcast. And and tagged her and everything. And then she did a story and said, oh, if you're into interiors, go listen to Inside Stylists.
Yeah.
I got 200 followers within 24 hours.
Yeah.
And that was just one mention.
Yeah.
Two mentions, but one proper mention.
Exactly.
And that was huge for me at the time. I was just starting to build up my Instagram. So,
but that's just how it works. That's how it works. That is like the golden key. It's something I talk about loads in my Instagram course. And it's so overlooked. Everyone is going, oh, how do I get followers? I can use this bot, or I'll do this pods thing, or I'll do a loop giveaway. People, do all these kind of loop giveaways and competitions and like all this sort of stuff. And I'm just like, nothing beats organic shout outs from influencers. And I'm not saying any influencer. It has to be someone who's got either your audience as well, or an audience that will have, some of them will have an interest, so like a crossover audience. And that is the best way to grow. That's the best way to, and I know saying that's like, well, you can't just go and like some influencer's going to shout you out, but that's why it's really important that you do really good work, and that the work in itself is super valuable, because then say a blah blah influencer is asking for help on how to design her living room, and actually you send her some links to like really cool wallpaper companies that she's not going to know of because they're indies and we know about because we're in the industry, and then she'll go, oh, Sarah just gave me these wallpaper things, she's really good, she knows loads about interior design. Not all of her audience might convert, but a percentage of them, and that can be a hell of a lot to someone when they're starting out. So
it's kind of almost about the connections and the building up the friendships online sort of thing.
Very much so. I think it's relationships, and it's about being useful, doing good work. If you don't do good work, people can shout you out, and then you'll get followers, and then they disappear. The same way you can do a competition, and you might get a load of followers overnight, and then within 6 months they've all dwindled off because actually they weren't that interested. They just wanted your freebie.
Yeah. Do you think people actively unfollow?
Yeah, it's weird because I'm not like an unfollower person. Like I would say probably about like every 6 months or once a year, I might sit and go through and just be like, I never look at these. I'm clearing them out. But I'm not one of those people who every day will unfollow. But a lot of people do.
God, really?
Like I interviewed, I did an Insta Live with an influencer last night, and she was saying, oh, I'll often like just unfollow people like on the daily. And I was like, oh, do people do that? Like I would, but maybe it's just different people, different ways. And
because you know that people follow and unfollow, but just
that's bots as well. The bots will do all that. But I think this could be a weird take on it, but I think also the younger generation, so like people up to 25, are a lot more fickle, and I think they will unfollow and follow quite often.
How many blog followers do I need to be considered an influencer and start making money from my blog?
Oh, I don't know.
I think that's a bit of a funny question, really, because if you're in a really tight niche and you've got like 1,000 followers, that might be enough for some brands, mightn't it? But then if you're in another one, you might need 10,000.
Yeah, I mean, so it all comes down to the brands, right? And brands are, you can't like ever predict what they want. Some brands are literally just all about the numbers, and they will just go to someone who's got 100,000 readers on their blog, and they've got 50,000 Instagram followers, even though those people might just be coming off of one Pinterest post that's got really popular. They just don't know, and they don't care. They don't do the research beyond like what the numbers are, and they're just like, cool, we'll give you this money and you just promote it, and they think that it's going to work. They're just ticking boxes basically. They go up the chain and they go to their company, oh, we got an influencer who's got 50,000 followers, and they're like, great, you're worth your money, even though like nothing's happened. And then some brands they really research, and they will really look at how you convert and how many people click links, and they'll ask for screenshots of all your stories on Instagram and all this sort of thing. And they really are much more about the engagement, and they'll look at whether you've had comments on things and whether people are asking questions. So if I post a picture of that cushion, do 20 people ask me where I got it? So it really depends on the brand. But I just try and only work with brands that are interested in the engagement and the authenticity of something.
Yeah, I went to... I speak to the PRs about this quite a lot, about the whole influencers and stylists, which is something we're going to come on to in a minute. And I say, well, where does your focus go? And they always say, which I don't know if they're just blowing smoke up my ass, but they always just say magazines and newspapers are our first hit, and then it goes out further along.
Who says that? Brands?
The PRs, yeah, the brands. And they've looked at how some of the macro influencers have got, people will swipe straight past them, so they actually are going for the micro now. So the people who've got 2,000 or 3,000 followers rather than 50,000. And I was quite surprised by that these massive brands are still looking at the smaller followings. But I think you're right. I think it's all about the engagement, and that the smaller brands are the person next door who's going, I really like this Smeg fridge or whatever.
Yeah, and I have 20,000 followers, and sometimes I'll go and look at someone who's got 5,000 followers, and we get the same amount of comments and we get the same amount of likes on a picture. The more people you have follow you, the more you just get tumbleweeds that are like rubbernecking. They just want to look at what you're doing, but they're not really engaging. So as a brand, I would be thinking, okay, so I can go to so-and-so person who's got 5,000 followers, but she gets the same engagement as Sarah, but I can offer her like a quarter of the price. So, because maybe they haven't quite got a brand yet, but they might still have that influencing power with their audience because it's a more niche audience, or they're more engaged, or you just can't tell. The best thing you can do is like reach out to brands that you like and try and find out like how they work or how they operate and do a good job, basically. If you create good content and you're being useful and valuable to people, like, it will happen.
And also from a stylist point of view or a writer point of view, you have those contacts already. You're already talking to them. You're already receiving their press releases. You have someone to build up a conversation with about it, so you can almost have a head start on.
And I guess you always have to think, right, a brand's ultimate aim is to sell product. So if you're a stylist who's only talking to other stylists, they're probably thinking, well, that's not really like a sales like audience for us. But if I know that you've got loads of women at home who are going to go and shop online, then they're probably more likely to, or they've got to see how you can position their product in a certain way. And so you've really got to try and see it from their point of view as well, and see like, well, where's the use, like how's this useful for them exactly? What's the benefit?
Right, so this last one isn't really a question, it's a comment that was on the Facebook group. It's quite long.
Okay.
I don't think I'm going to read the whole thing, actually. I think we might just talk about it, or would you prefer me to read it?
Maybe you can read like a bit. Okay. I mean, that looks quite long.
So, it's like it's two people's comments, but basically it's about stylists who blog versus bloggers who style.
Right.
I'm just going to read this bit. One of the reasons I stopped blogging was because I felt that increasingly PRs and brands were thinking of me as a blogger who dabbles in styling rather than a stylist who runs a blog, which there is absolutely nothing wrong with in itself. But my issue was it felt like it was becoming detrimental to my styling work, and I was actually getting overlooked for commercial work as I was being placed in the blogger camp. Therefore, it wasn't occurring to clients to consider me for their styling of their lookbooks or their next shoot, and the offers I was getting were for producing social content, and often in exchange for a cushion or exposure, which we've already discussed, rather than money, to buy food and rent and stuff. And as I wasn't a pro blogger, it wasn't just a sideline gig. I wasn't operating my blog in a business-like manner with media kits, rates for advertorial sponsorship posts, sidebar ads, etc., which the full-time bloggers are so good at.
Yeah.
So that's kind of talking about the whole being seen as two different things. Right, so actually her point is, I guess my rambling point is, do other stylists who blog feel that it can be in some ways detrimental to their styling work, as suddenly all their work offers come from them as a blogger rather than a stylist? And it's kind of, so.
Yeah, it's a hard one. It's not something I've experienced personally, but I do know other people that have gone through a similar thing as interior designers, that have said, they're just maybe perceiving us as this, which doesn't hold as much credibility or doesn't have as much clout. It is a tough one. It's kind of like, I think you probably do need to decide where you want to go.
Yeah.
And there's a way of, so for example, my friends 2LG Studio, interior designers, have a blog. It is very highbrow. Okay, they will sometimes do stuff that's a bit more accessible, but they are very good at going, we're going to keep this within the peer community of interior designers. Therefore, we're not going to go and talk about the best high street buys 5 cushions, because that's actually going to Bloggerland.
Yeah.
And they're very good at doing that. And I think, but that, I know that took them a while to sort of work out. So it can be done. It's not like it can't be done. And they're a really good example of that.
So maybe the thing is to carry on blogging, but not take on any of the freebie work that they're not blog for other people. Just blog for yourself and promote yourself. And not do anything for the other brands.
You need to be quite. I would imagine as a stylist, if you're trying to use a blog to grow your brand as a stylist, then it's going to be. It's going to be within the sort of your peers and talking to them and showing brands that when they go on your thing, oh, actually, you're very good at what you do. You know what you're talking about. If you are trying to attract brands and get paid jobs, you would do stuff that's a lot more accessible and a lot more kind of to consumer rather than to your peers. And I think... it is hard because you sort of do need to just set out your stall early on and go, well, this is what I'm doing. I think, but I guess what she's saying is that it's detrimental, that it could be taking away work. And I would ask, without knowing this person, is that because you've almost mimicked what other pro bloggers do, which is talk about the very accessible stuff, the high street stuff, blah, 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 when actually as a stylist would you talk about things in a different way? And I guess I would say, what's your aim with having a blog? Or have you just done it because everyone said that that's what you should do, and so you've done it without really going, what am I doing this for? Who's it for? I mean, this is the thing with everything. Your Instagram account, your blog, your business, your anything, who's it for? And if you know who the end user of it is, then you can work backwards from that and go, well, so what am I doing this for? What do they need to see? If you're doing a blog to get more work from styling, from brands as a stylist, then you need to somehow display that on your blog and with what you're doing. And that might be more about, going to the design shows or going to Milan or going to Maison Objet or whatever and doing what I saw or the forthcoming trends. More of an editorial, journalistic point of view. Yeah. I don't know if that's the right answer. Do you know what I mean?
I think
I'm just I would guess.
Yeah, it's that person can think about what they want out of it, sort of thing. And if it's pissing you off that people are coming to you, asking you to do stuff for free or for next to nothing, then it might be a case of doing it to promote yourself and not doing anything for any requests. You just don't take requests on. You just don't do things for the brands that are coming through because it can dilute your brand. Yeah, essentially. Yeah. Another part of this conversation was
the flip side of that, bloggers turned stylists,
is that the clients give highly paid styling jobs to bloggers who have only styled for their blog or for Instagram. This is great for many of the super talented bloggers out there, but has turned the world of fully trained, years of experience and assisting on big commercial shoots on its head. It's all very confusing, and normal styling rates are only just beginning to recover properly again.
From what?
Yeah, so kind of like the Instagrammers and the bloggers are getting styling jobs that traditionally experienced stylists would be getting.
The reason is because the only reason they go to bloggers is because they get the additional tie-in of the blogger's brand and the blogger's exposure, and you would never get that with a stylist because they don't have that. So that means, if you boil it down, that the brand was actually looking for something different. The brand was looking for exposure. They weren't looking for a good job. Yeah. If they're looking for a good job, no, but they will. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And it's kind of like, I don't think the brands, I mean, I could be wrong, but from doing these interviews, I think I mentioned this before we started recording, things have come to light that I wasn't aware of. One is that I don't know which big jobs are being, I don't know, people who aren't stylists who are being hired to do styling jobs, I don't think they're getting these great big jobs that are proper styling jobs.
No, I would never get...
I don't think they could, actually.
Even as someone who has actually been a stylist before, albeit very briefly, I still wouldn't ever get, like a 5-day
IKEA.
Yeah, they'd never come to me and go, hi, Sarah, they would literally be talking to me from a completely different angle, which would be exposure. We want you in the pictures. Can you put it on your socials? We'll sort out all the behind the scenes, or you can steer us on what you want it to look like, but we'll sort out all the budget and the sourcing. And it's not the same. It's just not the same.
It's not. And the other thing is that there have been occasions where stylists have been hired to style shoots for Instagrammers or for blogs and stuff. And I've heard of people who have told me that they have done it. So it's not gossip. I don't do gossip. So,
but then I would go, well, it's a styling job then. Like, what's the problem with that? Yeah. It's got someone else's name to it. The same way if you style,
no if you don't want to do it.
Yeah, if you style for IKEA, it's got IKEA's name on it. I don't know. Maybe it's a bit different because you don't maybe get the credit, like literally a credit.
But I think if you're doing that job, you know that. You know you're not going to get that credit.
Yeah.
And it might just be about paying the bills.
Yeah. I think the wider issue is to do with brands and instead of placing blame on bloggers or influencers, and it's not even a blame, it's just things evolving. Like I said about blogging is evolving, the way that brands approach stuff is evolving. So it is more about exposure and it is more about reach, and influencer marketing is almost probably the biggest form of marketing now. So they are going to be going with those marketing methods. So you can't hate the player, hate the game. Like, that's just how it is. Like, you can't really...
It's kind of like...
There's a lot of blame. Yes. There's a lot of blame.
Yes.
And it's the same with bloggers and journalists. Like, journalists hate bloggers. They go, oh, you're taking all our work and everything's gone online and digital. And it's like, we didn't make that happen. That's just happened. Like,
yeah, and actually, I kind of think in terms... And I know the people who have done these questions. I'm not going to name people, but... And I'm not speaking about them specifically, but I kind of feel when stylists are concerned about Instagrammers or influencers taking over certain jobs, I kind of think, well, then we need to build, like we being stylists and writers and assistants also, need to start building up our influence and start being the experienced influencer. And then they will come to us for both.
Yeah, I think so. But then I do also just think that...
I think they're too different. They're two different
entities.
I
don't think they're too different. I think you can. Some people will be able to tread the line of doing both, definitely. It's always useful to have a personal brand, I think, to build that up. But it's also just about being aware of how things shift and change. Like, as the world progresses every year, everything changes, trends change, technology changes, blah, blah, blah. And it's sometimes about just looking to where it's going. That doesn't mean it's necessarily influence. You just need to look at where it's going, and instead of going, I'm gonna grumble about it and that won't get you anywhere. And also, I just want to say, like, I really do feel for like those people the same way I feel for journalists that their industry's dying, the same way I felt for people that worked in studios mastering vinyl, and you can't do that anymore, or you can for like 1 in 100 people or more probably. I really do feel for them, because there's nothing worse than everything that you know like crumbling around you, and like the income that you once had going down, and like, you know, I see it the same with Instagram and all these things. I'm like, oh, so now everyone's just buying bots and it's fine and they're getting all the jobs, and it's a weird and horrible feeling like when it happens. So all you can do is not place blame, but look at where you could go and how you can move with where things are moving forward. And if you're too reluctant to do that, or you have to, you know, a limitation, then you need to look at doing something else, because it's just, it can be too difficult otherwise. Like, you're fighting an internal battle all the time. Yeah. So just getting a bit deep.
Thank you. That was brilliant. Can I ask you a couple of questions about how you do things?
Yeah.
You're prolific. Sorry, that's the end of the blogging, everyone. You're prolific in what you do. You do a lot of stuff. You're posting on 2 Instagram accounts every day. You do stories every day. You do posting every day. You do blogging, vlogging. And then not to mention anything else you're doing outside of kind of the digital world.
All my million ideas that I'm working on quietly.
Many courses. How do you organise yourself to get everything done and stay focused and not get overwhelmed, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so there's a few questions in that. So to pick it apart, how do I stay focused? I've never had a problem with not having focus, so it's very hard to say. the focus isn't always like on the project itself. It's more just like, I know what I want out of life, and I know where I want to get to, and I know where I want to go, and I'm obsessed with it. I'm like a dog with a bone, and I won't stop until I do it. So that just automatically gives you focus, because I'm not going to sit around fucking around and moaning or not doing work, because every day that I do that, I'm mugging myself off because I'm not getting closer to what I want.
Yeah.
So I think being really clear about, and that's not me going, oh, I want X, Y, Z. I just know the sort of lifestyle I want, and I know what I want for my family. I know how much money I want to have in the bank. Like, so I think that just helps you stay focused anyway, like having an overall bigger aim. Not getting overwhelmed. I don't know if I'd say overwhelmed. I definitely can feel the pressure a lot if I've got lots of jobs going on at one time. Because I do so many different things, sometimes unintentionally they overlap. Yeah. Or like different brands that I'm working with suddenly all want their stuff. And me and Jason Jason's my husband, we work together. We always like, I mean, in the moment, don't laugh about it, but afterwards just laugh about it. Like, how is it that we can plan to spread this stuff apart so well, and literally just the 1 week suddenly everyone wants their stuff, and you're just like, oh, like there's nothing you can do. Sometimes it's just out of your hands. So we and I especially definitely feel the pressure, I would say, more than an overwhelm of delivering. Like, I'm someone who, like, everything has to be delivered like beyond people's expectation. It has to be great. It can't just be okay. And that's more of like a personal thing to myself. So I put a lot of pressure on myself about things being good. So I'd say pressure more than overwhelm. And there was another bit to the question that I've forgotten.
Well, it was how do you get so much done? How do you stay focused? So you kind of answered
that. And getting things done, I think it's just, I also just do stuff that I love. So it just doesn't feel like work. And if it ever gets to the point where I'm not enjoying it, I just don't do it anymore. Like, I just do something else. Or sometimes if I'm working on the business school too much, then I'll be like, I really need to go and do a creative project. So I'll come up with an idea for a creative project and try and get that off the ground. But I also, I don't wait for people to give me stuff. Like, I just do it myself. So any ideas that I just try and start on them myself anyway. And I usually find that if you start it, then it seems to like attract in like people that will help, or a break comes along and you're like, that's interesting.
Like the machiner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or like, I've been talking about doing my kitchen, and then like, I was kind of like, I'd approached a few brands and no one was really didn't want to do anything. And so I thought, oh, fuck it, we'll just start doing it ourselves then. And as soon as I start doing it myself, like all these brands come out of the woodwork, like, oh, we hear you doing your kitchen. I'm like, I've told you this last year. But that's just like how it goes.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time. So if people want to get in touch with you, they can find you. So the blog is sarahakwisombe.com, and the business side of things, where all the courses are and the Insta quiz and everything, are noblebusinessschool.com.
Yeah, noble as in no bullshit, not like
no
everyone
ball.
Thought it was noble, like a noble knight. They were like the noble business school. I was like, no bull.
You never have picked up on that. If you want to follow Sarah on Instagram, it's at Sarah Akwisombe, and the business is No Bull School, not Noble School.
Not Noble School.
Sarah, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you for your patience in me getting lost.
Oh, it's
I'm
going
to have to stop saying this.
No, don't apologise. It's like me on that first day. It didn't really matter. It didn't really matter to be late, so it's fine.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening to the Inside Stylists podcast. You'll find all the links from today's episode and all the questions that were asked in the show notes at insidestylist.com/Sarah Akwisombe. So I mentioned that I wanted to share a story with you, and I will keep this quick, but I thought it was really important to let you know what happened after we recorded this podcast. I drove home, and while that was happening, Sarah gave a shout out about Inside Stylists on her Instagram account, on her stories. And from that organic reach, I gained 300 new followers on the Inside Stylists Instagram account. So it really does show how that organic reach has a massive effect on your following. And the reason I wanted to share this was because the people who are listening to this are probably very much into interiors. You're probably an interior stylist or a writer, you're something to do with PR, or you have an interiors brand. And I just think it would be really good if we all gave each other a bit more of a shout out. If you watch the influencers, you see them doing it all the time. So I'm encouraging everybody to share the love and give shout outs and help with that organic reach. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. So until next time, bye for now.